Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Eric. Happy birthday to me. Sometimes you just gotta sing yourself happy birthday. Because somebody else might not do it. But I'm so grateful that I have people in my life today that I know are singing happy birthday in their hearts. And I wanted to get on here and thank everybody for the birthday wishes on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Sometimes I downplay or I try to hate on social media, but at the end of the day, I still get that dopamine drip like everybody else. And man, I'm 30 years old today. 30 years old. And it's a trip. It's absolutely a trip. I have this podcast and it's rough and it's explicit and it's weird, but I'm okay with that because I know this is where I'm supposed to be, and it's taken 30 years to bring me exactly to this point. I'm so grateful I don't have to check in with anybody to get on the mic and to produce my own show. I'm grateful I have my own roof over my head and car to drive and dog to take care of. I am so incredibly blessed because it shouldn't be. Sometimes I feel so undeserving, but at the same time I relate to people that struggle with mental illness, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and just unforeseen circumstances that come up, the loss of someone close to us. And so even though it looks pretty glamorous from the outside, yeah, I've been on television, I've been on the cover of magazines, I model, I act. That stuff doesn't fill the empty hole, the void in your heart at the end of the day when you come home and you crawl in bed and it's just you. It's just been me, I've had to learn how to cope. And now I'm learning how to do that without alcohol. And I'm okay with that. And I'm going to miss the mark sometimes. I'm not in this joint to be perfect. Jesus was in this joint to be perfect. I'm not. So I'm not ashamed of that. And it's not about the destination. I could look back and say, yeah, I have a year of sobriety, or, I have all these trophies. I've been on television. That doesn't mean anything. What I remember most is not really when the camera was running, but when I was on the set of The Boss and Melissa McCarthy came up to me and told me how good of a job I was doing. When I ad-libbed and made her laugh and had a joke with her when I was talking to Kristen Bell and chopping it up because we got a mutual friend. Like, who would have thought? I just think about my 20s. I said this was a farewell to my 20s. My book, God Sent Dog, is on sale right now on Kindle for like dirt cheap. I just wanted to put it out there because it's not about making money. If I wanted to make money, then I would write something super invigorating, probably fictional. This was something I needed to do. It was very cathartic because I had to close this ending chapter of my 20s on a good note. And I'm so grateful that I held myself to that. And I chew myself out every day, probably once a day, like, oh, I said too much. I put too much out there. But you know what? I listened to T.D. Jakes, and one of his best podcasts I've listened to was on the T.D. Jakes podcast, and it's an intro to an interview where he interviews Megan Good and Devin Franklin. I might insert a clip of that. But he talks about not falling from your pain, fall into your pain. He says that your pain is your power. And man, I listen to that show on repeat because sometimes I got to hear that over and over again because I just feel so exposed. But you know what? My story is what is going to help somebody else. Because I remember what it was like to be in my basement room, pacing back and forth, just so full of rage, so full of anger, so mad at life. And yeah, there could be 2 Land Rovers in the driveway and food in the fridge, but where's the love? Where is the love? And when you're young, you get delusional because the tunnel vision, all you see is what you know. All you know is what you've been shown. So if you see pain, you go out, you play soccer, you play football, you play lacrosse, and you come home to an empty house. There's no dinner, or your parents are fighting, or they're getting a divorce, or you got beef with your brother or your cousin, family drama, church drama. And then you got stuff like 9/11, or somebody's going off to war, or, somebody died unexpectedly. All this emotion, we tend to think that's what separates us from animals. But I was listening to this podcast today, I think it's TED Radio Hour, talking about how do you say this word? Anthropomorphic? I can't even say it. Anthropomorphic, where we project human emotions onto animals and characterize them as such. We really humanize them. And you have that orca whale that had her baby, the first baby that was born in that pod, the J pod, and it died a couple hours after being born. And the mama orca pushed it up and was raising it above the water, as they usually do for a day or two. She swam with that thing for 1,000 miles. When her pod was going too fast, she fell behind, and she stayed with the carcass of her dead child. She was clearly grieving. But I don't think what people touched on was that I believe these orcas and stuff, whales, dolphins, are pretty intelligent. And they can see helicopters and planes. They can feel our magnetic pulls as human. They know that we're out there, and they know that we're destroying this planet. And I think it was a clear message. If we're going to talk about rhetoric, this female mama orca whale grieved for an extended amount of time. That was so extraordinary. The news took note. We all took note because it was so powerful. But I don't think that was for naught. I think they were telling us. She was telling us something. Look at what you're doing to us. If I don't show you my pain, then you'll never know. That's rhetoric. There's an intention behind what that whale did. And so that's what I want to do, is have an intention behind these literary works that I put out. Because it'd be one thing to go work in Hollywood and write a script for somebody else and, strip it from the headlines and that's my storyline for my episode. Yeah, real original, bro. Not even. So, I don't wish any pain on myself. I don't wish pain on anybody else. But, you get what you've been dealt. And it's when life gives you lemons, you can make lemonade. And y'all know I'm one man with one pan on Instagram. So if I'm making lemonade, I'm throwing some cayenne, some of that Australian honey, clear up your allergies. Get a little grapefruit, a little apple cider vinegar. It's about to be a tonic, a little kombucha lemonade. Because that's what I've had to make out of my life. And I pray and hope that if you're struggling in your 20s right now, that you hang on and you set some goals for yourself. And they could be pretty lofty, that's all right. But as long as you take a step towards that, if it's once a week, if it's once a month, I guarantee you, if you're passionate about it, you'll notice that hour will just fly by. I was trying to tell myself, I don't have time to do a podcast today. I want to enjoy my birthday. You know what? This is enjoying my birthday. 30 years old today. And so when I write a book like God Sent Dog and I talk about really vulnerable stuff, and I toss and turn at night like, oh, I said too much, I said too much, I shouldn't have said that. But that vulnerability is what's going to help somebody. It's this fake, glamorous, luxurious mess that we try to indoctrinate ourselves with and surround ourselves with. And if that's all we see on social media, that's a delusion. Because at the end of the day, all these luxury yachts, all these luxury hotels, they all got bathrooms. Because each one of us has to have this nasty brown stuff come out of our rear end, and it stinks. That's the process. And when our bodies die, when we die, our bodies stink. We came from the dust, we go back to the dust. And just because you got money in your pocket doesn't mean you're happy, doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. And if you think that's going to make you happy because you think it's going to make your problems go away, you're wrong. What's going to make your problems going away is going to be you problem solving. If you have a hurdle in your life, it's not really about paying it off. It's about the journey of you making that money. I remember that show on HBO, How to Make It in America. My best friend from Italy, we were vibing off of that because we kind of wanted to be them boys, kind of like bodega boys, hustling in New York, blah, blah, blah. And it's the grind. It's really not about the money, the amount of money. It's the grind. It's the journey. And if you can enjoy it, or if it's tough, maybe you're like me and you've worked in the restaurant industry your whole life, or you're a truck driver, utilizing that time and learning about yourself from bad situations. Because believe me, I've been in rehab with people that were straight out of jail that I never thought I'd be, sharing a house with, let alone a room. But I had to learn about myself and ask God, how do you said love everybody, love my neighbor as myself. How do I love this person? But you know what? Grace and mercy. And so I hope I continue to remind myself to show grace and mercy. It's so easy to get caught up in the ego and to lash out at people that have nothing to do with what we're going through, just because people don't behave the way we behave. There's a gentleman at the dog park I go to, and he'll just start talking to you. And, he's a little out of sorts, and he starts complaining about his life and stuff. And you're just like, man, I don't want to hear it. And as much as I want to tell him, dude, do you think everybody wants to sit here and listen to you when they walk in here? Like, I have a schedule. I'm trying to get my dog out. It's not like that. What it's like is that I can learn about myself and learn how to play this and be honest. And I was. Because my semiotics, my body language, he started to read, oh, you're not interested. And I said, it's not that I'm not interested. I said, but I'll see you here every day. And you tell me a little bit more about your story every day. But it doesn't all have to be today. Because I got to get him in here, Irie, my dog, to exercise. So that's what comes with age and practice and maturity. Because I have lashed out at people. And that's what keeps me up at night. I'm okay with writing a book, exposing my vulnerabilities, because I can't change the past. But my past is my past. And, T.D. Jakes in that podcast, he talks about something that I didn't really realize, because I went to Catholic school and you see all these crucifixes everywhere. And I grew up in the church. And he explains that often Jesus is painted with a loincloth, covering, his nakedness. But the fact of the matter is, Jesus died naked. And Jakes explains that's the shame of the cross. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it was so humiliating. And that nakedness, that vulnerability, is what draws people into the power of the promise. And so if I could use my cross, because I got to carry it anyway, that's my cross. It ain't going nowhere. I was born to do this. And I don't know why. I don't know how. Some of y'all are great athletes. Some of you are great fathers, weightlifters, practitioners, academics. But it's always been a communication thing with me. And those of you that know me and grew up with me, y'all know that. Y'all have known that. And you saw it in me. And I want to thank you for calling it out in me. Because if you didn't call it out in me, I don't know if I would have called it out. So it's coming with that vulnerability and bearing it all. And, as much as I want to be modest and be this cool guy, it's like Hollywood socialite or whatever, California boy, I struggle. We all do. And it doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank or where I got it from or how I got it. What matters is how I live my life right now. And this is where I'm at. So when I think about my 20s, man, when I was 20, that was 2010, 2011. I literally turned 20 and then went to Italy. That was after my freshman year of college, so that was the start of my sophomore year. And I was stoked because I was going to Europe a year before I turned 21, so I got to start indulging in wine, before I was 21 in America. And those are some of the best memories I have, man. Like just getting invested with my friends in Florence, Firenze. Shout out to Rufina, Ponteserve. Hey, Bomba. Like them taking me out to their dinners, graduation, and birthdays, and this group of friends. And the beautiful thing about Italy is that in high school, these folks don't change classrooms. The teachers change classrooms. So for 4 years, you're in the same room with the same people. And this social network, this bond that forms, it transcends high school. And so they would hang out, they still hang out with each other for college graduations from università and weddings. And when somebody's parent passes, they're there for each other. And I got to witness that, and I had a seat at the table. I was raising toasts with wine, and staying out all night and going to the clubs. Like, my 20th year was awesome, and I fell for someone pretty hard. I fell for an Italian guy pretty damn hard. That was the first time I think I got lovesick for a man. I've had crushes before, but we've talked about that, and he knows it, and we're on good terms now, and that's what's come by the time I'm 30. I never thought I'd be able to let him go. I never thought I'd be able to move on. I never thought I'd be able to love again. And that's another book that I'm writing about that year. And he wants me to write it because he knows that we have an incredible story together. That movie, Call Me By Your Name, or Call Me By My Name, what the hell, with Armie Hammer and Timothée Chalamet. Yo, that last scene where the kid's sitting by the fire, if you haven't seen it, that pierced me to my soul because I know what those tears are like. The whole credit rolling it never cuts to black. It shows this boy brokenhearted, and I know what it's like to ride away on that train and say goodbye to someone that you spent a year with, and it was just like a movie. And I've never had such an ugly, impassioned, outer body spiritual cry from when I, even just leaving Italy. The director over there that put me up and held me down when I was broke. I was washing dishes for all my peers and working in the basement kitchen and doing all these odd jobs. And a lot of people were traveling on the weekends and I couldn't afford it. But that's how I got invested. And yeah, it was uncomfortable and I was hungry sometimes. But you know what? I'm grateful because I'll never forget it. I'll never take it for granted. And those times got me out to museums and on my own. If I had a little free pass to go to a museum, just strolling around museums on my own. And that's what you do as you get older. You learn to chill with the simple things, but also the things that just you never thought, you feel like old people do. You never thought it would bring you peace. But I know I got to be peaceful to have peace. Irie, I can't have you chewing that. He's like chewing this toy right now. You never play with that. Now you want to play with it when I'm on the mic. Okay. I hope y'all can't hear that background noise. Anyway, so 2011, 2012, I came back, and man, my commercial had been on this public service announcement. I'll put a link to it in the description. Had been on television. So this whole year I was in Italy. I filmed this commercial almost a year and a half before I had left. And I come back and I just felt like the man. Like people knew me. And literally people driving on the street would start freaking out, or somebody would come up to me and they're like, "You're that guy. You're that guy that's on TV." And so I started to understand what fame was about and how exhausting it can be. How delusional, the glaze people get in their eyes when they see something that was on the screen come to life. And that taught me also how to interact with people that also share in being a public figure. And, that was my junior year in college. I made a short film, and YouTube several years later, almost 8 years later, has decided to take my idea and turn it into The Thinning. Well, you can look at The Thinning, but go ahead and look up my movie, The Steward, and I'll put a link to that. And you'll see that I made that movie almost 8 years before they created The Thinning. And the portrayal, the depiction, the storyline is the exact same thing, literally verbatim. And so that's also why I'm pursuing a law degree, because a lot of these lawyers out here don't want to fight the big bag wolf. Well, I'm going to be like Nia Long. Y'all might be scared. I'm not.
Look at your face. Look at your face. You okay? No, look at your face. Who do you think you are?
You know what you're talking about?
You know what I'm talking about, punk. You hit my sister like she was a fucking man.
Shit, I'm busy going through my pants while I was asleep.
My sister don't need to steal nothing from your broke ass, all right?
Better take your ass home.
I'm not scared of you. All these niggas around here might be scared of you, but I'm not.
Understand? And that's why I'm at where I'm at. And I'm not at NBC anymore. Because when you grow up reading MLK, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, when I grow up and my mother taking me to the Black History Museum in Birmingham, Alabama, or I just so happened, I remember we walked into a church. We were looking for the church where there was the bombing and the little girls died. I think it was like 4 or 5 little girls. And we were in the basement. And we didn't even know it, of the church where it happened. You know, nobody else was there. That was a really weird moment. But that was powerful. There was an energy in there. There was an innocence to it. And shout out to y'all. And I had a really good 21st birthday at Tim's River Shore Restaurant out there. And it's just those beautiful moments. It didn't have to be all luxurious. It was the fact that we were all together. That's what it was about. So coming back from Italy, having my commercial, you know, life just changed. And I'm glad I didn't get too big of a head about me because I didn't really see it that way. In hindsight, I realized what happened. But really, I didn't know. You know, you just kind of go with the flow at that point. So I go through my junior year, and that's also when I fell in love with the female. I come back from Italy, falling in love with an Italian guy, brokenhearted. But this girl I had been chasing since freshman year, and she knows who she is. She's actually Italian, and she was studying here in America. And we dated, and it was perfect. It was perfect. But as I come of age, and as things played out, I realized I loved her so much that I had to let her go. Because for one, I didn't love myself. I didn't love myself because I was questioning. There's that LGBTQ. Oftentimes people think the Q stands for queer, but it also stands for questioning. And I didn't understand because, you know, we had a very, very passionate relationship. Very intimacy, you know. And I hated myself. So how could I love her? And unfortunately, I ended that relationship. But that was a long time ending it, too. I mean, you all know how it is with relationships when you love somebody. But, you know, it can be toxic. And I didn't want to be toxic for her. She's very well balanced, and I'm so proud of her. And actually, we're on good terms to this day. I look forward to seeing her again soon. But, you know, that's what I had to learn when I was 21. And I also started coming out. Because by the time I got back from Italy, people had known I was clearly interested in men as well as women. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter what people knew. But to me, at that time, when you're young, you worry about people's opinion. And especially in college, that's your social network. And it's this hierarchical popularity, mean girls, grapevine gossip type situation. Well, and I fell for it, you know. But at the same time, I did do my own thing, and I did start getting honest, and I made sure my roommates, my fraternity brothers knew, you know, they were like, we were going around this new house we lived in Calabasas. There was 5 of us, and one of my roommates was like, what kind of girls do you like, you know, to one of my roommates? And they're like, oh, blondes. And the other one's like, oh, I like brunettes. And then they come to me, he's like, Eric, what about you? What kind of girls do you like? And I was sitting in this gamer chair that rocks back and forth, and I was just rocking back and forth, and I was like, I like guys. I'm gay. I like guys. I like boys. And they were just like, okay. And like 2 of them just like quietly left the room. And then the other one was just like, he's from New Zealand. He's like, it's okay, mate. It's all good, man. And you know, people like that really, they saved the day. Because that was something that literally made me suicidal at some points too. So people that show you love and, you know, tell you it's okay when you come out the closet and stuff like that, you know, and they knew me as the guy on campus that was dating this bad Italian chick. So it was a little confusing and a little controversial, but whatever. And I love those guys. And eventually we lived in that house, and gosh, that was a great time. Y'all see that movie Neighbors, where the fraternity moves next door to Seth Rogen? Like, that was based on our life, pretty much. I know it was, because we would have dads coming over during a party. Like, they would get in a mass. They were like, we're going to go as a group. We're going to tell them to shut it down. And they would. They'd come knock on our front door, and they'd be like, guys, come on, we're going to call the school and complain. And they did sometimes. But, college is college. So, 22, 2012, everybody thought I was the end of the world. The Mayan calendar. I was 22, catch 22. And at that point, I had to take some time off of school. And I remember I was living up a canyon in Malibu. And what had brought me there was the fact that the lease ended in Calabasas. And during that year, I interned at NBC. And I would drive my Jeep Wrangler that I had gotten as when I graduated high school. My mom, helped me get that, and I was making payments on it or whatever. And I was working a side job. I was working at the fish shack. But my parents' marriage fell apart. My mom's marriage to my stepdad. I didn't have, and after coming back from Italy, my resources were exhausted financially. So I had to end up selling the Jeep after it had almost been repossessed and stuff like that, because I couldn't afford to take care of it. And I got really depressed. And I left the internship a little bit early, and I was a PA. I helped cast some hit shows on television. And I worked for the casting agent, and I was also the post-production assistant, and I was just the assistant. And I was working at NBC on the lot, and it was a dream come true. It's what they write movies about, and that was my internship. So I was doing that and trying to balance coming out and a new career and paying my bills, and I just started falling into a massive depression. But I always kind of hustled and did what I had to do. So like that meant buying an '86 Cadillac DeVille Burgundy. That I just literally saw the ad, called the guy, bought it on site. It had cobwebs on it, and rode that thing around Malibu. And by the time I was 22, there were some times when I was living out of a '86 Cadillac DeVille. I remember coming down the canyon, and I ran out of gas, and thank God I was going downhill, because everything got quiet and we were just coasting, and I was like, all right, well, we rolling then. We're gonna have to ride this one out to the street. Thank God I was going downhill, man, because I was making those turns on the corner, and it was, you didn't want to brake because wanted to keep that momentum. It was a wild time. But if y'all want to hear more about like the spooky stuff living in up that canyon in Malibu, Latigo Canyon, I got some ghost stories on Tony Merkel's show, The Confessionals. And wow, Tony just released an episode on the Confessionals podcast, and he said last month, the month that he released my episode, 750,000 downloads. He said it was a record-breaking month. And I didn't think my story was that interesting, but I knew he was somebody I could connect with, and we related on stuff like that. And Tony's actually stepping up and, volunteered to kind of mentor me a little bit. We're not in the same state or anything, but he's offered to help. And so that's why I'm cranking out this next book that is about some spooky ooky stuff. And he told me he's going to help promote it. And he also invited me back for his first live show on his website, a members live show. And it's just, it doesn't pay. It's not like I'm making money off of it, but that's my vocation. I want to sit in on radio shows. I want to be on, live shows and help another podcaster. And he's helping me. He's showing me the ropes. So, I'm glad I'm in the vicinity of someone that is gaining so much momentum, because birds of a feather fly together, baby. So 22 was rough. It was hit or miss. And I took some time off off of going to college, but because of my scholarships and financial aid, the school said, "Hey, you got to come back, because if not, you're going to lose all this, and we've invested in you." And I let them know, I'm working 2 jobs, and not just the internship, but I got a job vending cameras. So these movies like Superman, Man of Steel, and that show like Once Upon a Time, and even Breaking Bad, I was the one calling those directors of photography, asking, when you going to wrap? What kind of lens do you need? Getting quotes and stuff like that. People don't know the grind that goes behind the Hollywood industry. I was making a mogul millions out of his home office. And, eventually, he would end up putting me up a few years later because I worked for him for 7 years. And his daughter told me, she's like, my dad never has friends. And I ended up having, spending Christmas dinners with them and babysitting for them, their son, and, rubbing shoulders with these kids that, y'all see on the cover of Vogue and stuff that are running around Malibu. Like, I would have to keep an eye on them sometimes if they came over to the house while the parents are gone. My boss trusted me like that. And that's age, man. See, that's what comes when you get older. People start trusting you. You start getting responsibilities. And these kids, the rich, famous mofos you watch on MTV asking me if I want to take shots with them. And, I said no. And you start setting boundaries. And you start realizing that your decisions and the choices you make. Because if I would have done that, I would have lost the trust that had been placed in me. And it's crazy, man. That place isn't even there anymore because of the fires and mudslides. But by 2013, I'll never forget that year because I was so stoked to have finally finished another year of college. I was living in a condo in Malibu with people I actually got along with, friends. And I remember I took my finals, and the next day I woke up and I had my job doing the camera house, and then I had my job later in the day at the fish shack. So I got on my bicycle and I was going downhill on PCH, and I ended up, my hat flew off, and I didn't want to go half a mile down this road, so I pumped my brakes and my front wheel locked up. Everything slowed down. It wasn't like my life flashed before my eyes, but I knew I was falling. And I'm not the most athletic person. I've always played sports, but I can be a klutz. So I landed on my face, slid on my face, tore open the lining in my mouth. The doctor said it's a miracle I didn't lose any teeth. I didn't break my neck. I wasn't wearing a helmet. And I did a cartwheel on my head, kind of like that fight porn you see on Reddit when people get body slammed. Like, that's what it looked like. So I broke my leg in 2013, and I thought, how funny, because 13 some people think is like bad luck. And a friend of mine, when I got back to class at the end of that summer in the fall, he said, it's funny because last semester you said you had never broken a bone. And then I was walking back in there with a boot, and I spent that whole summer posted up with a broken leg. And I still got a metal plate in my left ankle and 5 screws in there right now. And I'm grateful for that surgeon up in Thousand Oaks. He hooked me up. Everything's rolling great. So 2013 was that to 2014. So at the end of 2013, I remember December, that whole semester, I didn't get my financial aid. I didn't get that money back because when you live off campus, they'll pretty much pay you for what it costs to live on campus, since, that's room and board is included in your tuition type thing. But usually I would bank on that and get it in the beginning of the semester at some point. So I had to hustle the whole semester. And I remember I gave my final, because I'm in communications, it was an oral presentation on Emily Sande's music video. And it's a beautiful, it's My Kind of Love is the song. And I'll put a link to it. It's a beautiful song, and the music video is very powerful because you can see bullets spewing out of people's mouths. And I study rhetoric, the rhetorical sake, hello. And so the power of words, the power of language. And I'm glad I was able to delve into that. But I remember finishing, and this professor, she was like, this was your last final, wasn't it? And I said, yeah. And the whole class started clapping. And that was such a big moment for me because it had been 7 years of working at the fish shack, going to that camera job,
riding the bus, riding bikes, coming out of the closet. And I never thought that I would make it. But I'm so glad that I didn't get hung up in visualizing what I couldn't do, and I just kept going. So if you're there and you don't know how you're going to finish school, if they got you signed up, just show up to class. Just go to the financial aid office and leave everything on the table. Tell them how you were abused as a kid. Tell them what's going on with your family. Tell them how you want this. And that was such a good moment. And I gotta say, after that, I've had so many cars, but I had a Lexus, and I hopped in that, and I went to Marina Del Rey, Venice Beach area, where my best friend was living. And he knows who he is. He's in Colorado right now. And I just walk in to hang out, and I was like, I'm done. And he walks up to me, and he put out his hand, and he said, congratulations, man. I'm proud of you. And when you don't have any brothers, and when you don't grow up with a dad, or your biological father, to have someone in your life that's loved you through and through, and that's the guy that taught me that it's okay to be who I am. He introduced me to Frank Ocean. Can you believe that? A white guy introduced me to Frank Ocean. And he said, this guy's gay, and he writes all these songs. He look at his album and stuff, and we'd listen to it, and oh gosh, it's those friends. It's those moments. And so that was December, and we went out that night and celebrated, because when I walked out of that final, I went to my mailbox, this mailbox I'd had this whole time, and a check was in there for all the thousands of dollars in financial aid I didn't get that semester. So I got to set myself up in 2014 and ended up moving to this house in out down the street from like the Staples Center in Harvard Heights, this old Victorian house near downtown LA. Really rough looking neighborhood, but Western and Normandy, all around 2020, Western and Normandy. Friday reference right there for anyone. Yeah, and I started getting into music, and that's when I started writing too, and singing, but I also just started writing my books and scripts. And little by little, over the years, I would write these scripts because I learned how to write screenplays when I did that internship in 2012. I would read the screenplays they had me. I would proofread them for my internship. But by May, it was time for graduation, because I wanted to walk in an actual ceremony, even though I had finished my classes in the fall. So in December of 2013, and I remember showing up to graduation, and I was so high, I took a dab before my friend Janae drove us from downtown LA to, and I had another Cadillac at that point. I had a pearl Cadillac with a green soft top. 96 DeVille, baby. I was getting pulled over left and right. Thank God I had my little college parking pass on my car, because the cops would let me go. I remember I've never seen, out of all the years in Malibu, I'd never seen the ocean so green. It was such a beautiful emerald, and the way the wind was picking up the high seas out in the distance. And I got to graduation, and my family was there, and I was the first in my family, my mom's side of extended family, to graduate with the 4-year degree, and not just a degree, but from Pepperdine, and to be black and graduate from Pepperdine. And I was also one of the first black men to graduate with this new degree that they had established, this new concentration of rhetoric and leadership. And because I was so in and out, they tried to talk me out of it, but I told them, no, I've come this far. I'm getting this degree. They were like, well, you qualify for international studies. I don't want that.
That's not my vocation. That ain't my life. So
I'm grateful for the public speaking teacher my freshman year that nominated me to pursue that, because she could nominate 2 students, and she wrote me a letter and she said, I nominated you and I really encourage you to pursue Rhetoric and Leadership, Bachelor's of Arts. And I did. And that was 2014. And what a beautiful time. What a beautiful time. So I graduated and then I left and I went to New York City with the musician friend of mine, a great creative, really talented guy. I hope he's doing well right now. And I lived in Harlem with him. And the first day I got there, I got a job as a bike messenger. And it was like something straight out of a movie. It was just a straight up New York. It looked like one of those old newspaper offices where like people would smoke in and there's desks everywhere and it's humming. But I was a bike messenger. And I also was catering. And that's when I would cater to like QVC and Martha Stewart and Bobby Brown Cosmetics. And then I realized on this 3-day project, it was Oprah. And it was July 21st, 2014. And my partner had gone back downstairs because they weren't wrapped to have a cigarette. So I was in the craft services area because it's a big room. And then the photographer was in the studio next to me. The doors were open there. And then the cosmetics and just everything else were in another room. So I was in there alone, but I could feel her energy. And I knew it was about to happen. And then she rounded the corner in this beautiful yellow gown, decorated in diamonds. And I knew it was a moment, and I didn't really know the best way to go about it, but I knew I needed to seize that moment. If Oprah had taught me anything listening to her, and Miss Jackson, my accounting teacher, you got to seize that moment. And so I looked her in her eye because she was smiling at me. She was saying hi, and I said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Do you happen to remember me?" And she stopped and she leaned back and she looked and she said, "I do." And people that grew up with me and went to high school with me know I was the kid that met Oprah when I was doing a speech competition. Almost 7 years to the day, I met her again. It was July of 2007. And then I met her again on 7/14/21. And 7 is the number of completion. So for all those that date to, y'all know I'm into numerology if you listen to my last episode, to fall into place and those be, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, multiples of 7, everything's kind of going in order. And I had to put my foot down because I was dealing with some issues at that job, working with an extreme homophobe that was just spouting some really gnarly stuff. So I left that gig, and, a lot of people told me, you shouldn't have done that because she's friends with people in the music industry, and now you're never going to make it. Well, you know what? I'd rather stand up for what's right and not make it, whatever you call make it, and be able to sleep and live with myself than to keep putting up with abuse, because if I don't do something, it's going to happen to somebody else, at that same job. So I let that go, and I ended up becoming homeless because I couldn't live in the place in Harlem anymore, and I could not afford the room I was renting in Washington Heights. It was also just not safe. So I was living in a homeless shelter, and then I got invited to move to Florida. And I moved there with my childhood best friend, and I'm grateful for what their family did for me. And I learned a lot about myself. I lost 45 pounds, but I also got my heart broken again. And so that comes with time. That's going to happen in life. That's why you go through your 20s. And so much so, my heart was literally broken. I had an anxiety attack, and I thought I wanted to kill myself. And I ended up getting taken to the hospital and getting an EKG. And they were just wondering, why are you like this? And I was like, well, I just kind of, broke up or, fell out with my best friend. And they're like, okay, well, how long did you know? I'm thinking I was going to say like 5 months, 6 months, 11 years. 11 years. And my heart was literally broken. And so my family, my aunt, she took me in Atlanta. I flew up there, and they flew me up there. And I thank God for her.
I thank God for her, because the only thing that got me through that time was that love and support and being with someone that wasn't afraid to hold your hand and cry with you and work through you with it. I started running, and it's hard because I lost the weight with someone I fell in love with. And so to start working out again or keep working out constantly reminded me of him. But I just kept going. And I changed my playlist. I made up breakup songs. And so I learned how to cope and work through that. And I just learned a lot about myself. And it's not something you see right then and there. It's not like I'm telling myself I'm strong enough to get through this. I didn't tell myself that. I just did. I just can't overthink it. And I know when I don't work out, when I don't go on a run, when I don't do something, it's probably because I overthought it. I don't know if you can relate to that. So, 25, I was back in California, back in the same trailer I'd lived in off and on for the last 2 or 3 years. And 2015, September 21st, I was back working at the Fish Shack, after leaving for a year in New York, Florida. I'm grateful that when you are a good worker, when you are an asset to a business, you can leave and come back. In BC, I don't work there right now, but I could still get a job there. I'm more than welcome to apply back, according to the letter I have right here in my possession. I choose not to do that because I'm putting my foot down. And I know, this is what comes with age. I know my limits. I know where I need to be. And I know that a name, popularity, a toxic relationship, I'm not going to keep going back to the same person that's going to beat me up. So 2015, I got back to California, September 21st, 2015. I was working at the Fish Shack. And, you have your friends come in, or even professors, because it's down the street from the school. And they're like, what are you doing here? You graduated. They'd seen me in college for 7 years and always here at this Fish Shack. And I told I'm just living life. And when I decided to not be disgruntled about it, even though I was taking the bus and I was struggling with my alcoholism, when I went to work, I decided to be happy. I made a decision not to be that snappy, bitchy guy at work because I'm pissed that I work here. No, I changed my attitude and I did not project my disdain for my life. I accepted it. And it showed. And eventually a lot of doors open. So at that point, September 15th, 2021, I was closing up. We were near closing the restaurant. And I checked my phone, a text message, and it was news that the man that had raised me, not my biological father, but my dad, had died of a massive heart attack. And there was no funeral. And I mourned. And I grieved in a bad way. I went out and I was mad. I was mad at God. I was mad at life. And I said I wanted to be bad. And so that's when I sought drugs and I found drugs. And I had a terrible experience. I do not recommend that because people that do drugs don't have your best interest in mind unless they're on the road to recovery or they're making a solid decision to stay clean and sober. So I ended up getting evicted from a place I was told I could live for free within a couple of weeks of my dad dying. And so once again, I was homeless, and that family, that mogul in Malibu, took me in, and I was working in his home office, and I was sleeping in the bottom bunk of his 7-year-old's room because the 7-year-old didn't use his room, but they were like, yeah, just stay in his room. And it's people like that, I was living down the street from celebrities, and it was crazy. It was like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But I knew that wasn't where I was supposed to stay. I didn't I didn't want to get comfortable. I didn't want them to think I was trying to take advantage. I already felt weird enough eating their food and sleeping in, their son's room. So eventually I found a boat in Marina Del Rey, and the guy rented it out to me. And I started living on a boat. and I got a job as a dog runner. So I would run this Damascus puppy at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. every day. And so I was running about 7 miles a day. And I was also just spewing out emails. And I ended up spewing out an email to my supervisor at NBC, and they had an opening. But that was in 2016. So let me back up. 2015, well, coming into 2016, there was like a New Year's brunch that I did with a couple of my friends that I graduated with from Pepperdine and their CrossFit friends. We would get together on the weekends and hang out by the pool in El Segundo. And got really plastered and ended up falling off my boat. And the next morning, like in between the dock and the boat, and I was like holding myself up with my one hand on the boat and one hand on the dock. I was drunk. The next morning, I couldn't walk. And so I ended up tearing a muscle. And thank God for my auntie who came all the way from like the desert and helped me move out of the boat when I couldn't walk and took me in. And while I was back at my grandmother and aunt's house, I started spewing out emails because I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a burden on anyone, and that's not how I was raised. And I had faith enough that I could do this. And the first day that I walked again was into an interview back at NBC. And that was the first of 3 interviews I would do. And they asked me, there's 2 other candidates. Why should I choose you? And I told her, I said, you asked me that in 2012 when I interned for you. And she was surprised. And I said, I'll tell you again, I'm going to be great no matter where I go. I am going to be great no matter where I go. So it's in your best interest to hire me because y'all will benefit. If not, some other company's going to benefit. And I'll leave it at that. And that answer always got me in the door. In 2016, it wasn't just that answer. It was the follow through and paying attention to details and not letting other people's egos get under my skin. And then I started at February 16th, 2016. March 16th, 2016, a producer had invited me out to lunch. I could tell he was kind of like weeding me out, like reading me up. And I got back and my supervisor was like, send me your shit. I said, excuse me? She said, send me the shit that you wrote. Because I had said I'm a writer and I have scripts. So I'm sure she was expecting 1 script. I sent her 3. I sent her 2 episodes of an hour-long mystery crime drama and then another feature-length film that I had developed. And that got me promoted. And so in 2016, I started working on a show, but I was dealing with homophobia. And I wasn't out at work, but one thing I'm not going to do is, I'm going to stick up for the underdog. That's just my grind. That's always been my thing. I don't watch sports a lot, but I will root for the underdog. And I couldn't stand for it. And it wasn't just in my mind. It was my body, my anxiety, because of my past, reacted to the abuse. And eventually, and what this next book is about the terror and the dark arts of Hollywood. Because there is a dark underbelly. And it's not a conspiracy. It's the truth. And I've experienced it. You rub these people the wrong way, and they will come after you from every angle. And I'm talking about cyber attacks, stalking, and throughout 2016, I put up with it, and I have tons of evidence that will eventually come out. The story will be told, and that's why I'm writing it, because it needs to happen. I mean, there was this chick, African-American woman on The Rookie TV show, and she just departed from the show because of the same complaints that I had made. And I made mine anonymously. I complained anonymously. And by my birthday, August 16th, they let me know, my coworkers, that they knew I was the one that had complained. And with that, they also knew I was gay. I was bisexual. I was LGBTQ. And from there, it ebbed and flowed. And and I had development deals with execs on the table. I was sending them my screenplays. I was going to the beach and lunch with them. I had meetings set up. But by 2017, it got to the point where I was being harassed and stalked so much, and I feared for my life. That's when I adopted my dog, Irie. And so y'all need to check out the book, God Sent Dog, because I explain the events leading up to that. And this next book will actually explain in further detail of 2016, 2017, of the nefarious aspect of working in television and film, and what you should be prepared for if that's something you're interested in, but also to expose, because it's like the Bible says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against evil in high places. And I've seen it. It's not really something you can grasp. It's a collective consciousness of darkness. And it's really rather unfortunate. A toxic work environment it's not worth my health. It's not worth my longevity. And I can learn that, but my body wasn't letting me have that. My anxiety wasn't letting me have that, and I couldn't work under that stress. I was drinking to cope because of the contracts I had signed. I couldn't talk about what was happening at work. I couldn't even talk about the new episode. You know, you have a lot of privileged, confidential information. So I drank, and I drank myself to the point where when the producer wrote an episode and described my apartment, described my female roommate, described my dog in the script, and then used the character, my name. And then when they filmed it, the guy that's playing the person named after me is clearly effeminate gay male. And I could tell I had gotten so deep under that guy's skin that he actually included me in an episode. And at that point, and y'all will see in the next book, why I ended up having a breakdown from my alcoholism, mentally, anxiety, and found myself on my kitchen floor crying and started to reach out. So 2017, that's when I got into rehab. And that was a long, hard process, I'll tell you that. And I'm so grateful that I did that. If you're struggling with alcohol and drug addiction, utilize whatever resources you can, because it is such a beautiful, beautiful community. It's nothing but love, and the most unlikely of characters you'll see come together. It doesn't matter if you make 5 figures or if you make 2. If you're living on welfare or if you establish in a company, you know, this disease will bring you to your knees. And it's done it time and time again. For me, and especially even more recently. And I write about it because I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not trying to put on some persona like I have it all together, because I don't. I'm 30 years old, and yeah, I'm maintaining. But the clothes, the car, the dog, well, the dog is God sent, but the material stuff, that doesn't keep you from drinking. That doesn't keep you from feeling the pain of wanting to drink and why you drink. And so starting to feel again is a whole nother thing. And it's okay to feel. I let myself feel now. But it's hard because I have this summer been numbing that. So now I'm working on developing that feeling again. So 2017, I got into recovery, got into the program of like rehab and 12 steps. And it's just, you know, those are great tools just to get through life. Even if you're not a drunk, like look at the 12 steps. And if you could do those, like you would definitely, it gives me a new lease on life. Like just being able to live the way I'm living now. And so moving in, you know, I got out of rehab and, you know, there was an investigation and all this stuff. And pretty much, you know, they told me you're wrong, you know, and actually you need to apologize to your supervisor for what you said to her the last day you were there. Because I told her they were treating me like a house nigger. My coworkers were literally bringing stuff to my desk. I was the only person of color because they knew it was time for promotions, and they were trying to basically weed me out so that I would not be invited to come back to the next season of the show. And they're just making my life a living hell. And she's a woman of color. And I was like, I feel like a house nigger. Well, out of the whole sexual harassment, hostile work environment investigation, that was the only problem that they found. So you wonder why I don't want to go back and work there? There you go. It ain't worth it. So I established myself again, and during that time while in rehab, I was on my way to a doctor's appointment. They were taking me, and the driver rear-ended someone on the 405, so I got in an accident there. Started having neck issues. Then rolled into 2018, just struggling to stay sober, establishing myself, starting life over again. And I was really struggling with just letting go of my career, because that seemed to define me as a man with no wife and kids, no husband or kids, just a dog. I felt like I had lost my career. I'd lost myself. And I hit a bottom over and over again. And I had to do that. That's part of my story. That's part of my journey, to learn, one, how good God is, how good my higher power is. Two, that it's not worth it. Drinking and doing drugs is not going to get rid of my problems. I'm the one that has to solve it. I got to face it. And by facing it, it's simply by living sometimes. It's simply by living, and to put the bat down and stop beating myself up. If you're like me, I can tear my ass up. Put the bat down. Stop beating yourself up is the best advice someone ever gave me. And that woman nursed me in detox several times. So going into 2018, I wrote God Sent Dog. I got back on track, and I got passionate, and I realized I needed to live my truth. And so I wrote about what I had gone through in rehab and going in and out, and what had happened in motel rooms and things like that, just my war story. And so I was promoting the book, and I was driving around getting sponsors, and I remember I left a meeting in Newport Beach, and at like 7:05. By 7:09, a drunk driver had rear-ended me, like slammed into me at 45 miles per hour, threw me in my car across the intersection, and I came to there. And I couldn't work for the summer. I tried doing construction and stuff like that, and my back, my neck just weren't having it. And so, living on disability short term, and just didn't, living in a condo in Orange County is not enough, and having a dog and stuff. So I hit another bottom, and I landed up on my grandmother's couch, and I thank God for my grandmother and my aunt for always having an open door. But like I said, I hate being a burden. And as a man, you tend to beat yourself up. So I really pressed my attorneys throughout the end of 2018 to resolve it. And by Christmas, the case had been settled, and I was able to get back on my feet. And here I am at my own place that I've been for several months now. And, it's good to be able to help out family, too, to be that guy where if somebody needs something, because I've always that guy. I've been that kid. That's what you do in your 20s. You reach out and you ask for help. But now that I'm 30 years old, it's funny because I'm able to help them. And it's not like I'm balling. I ain't no millionaire, nothing like that yet. I am. I speak that into existence right now in the name of Jesus. But the way my bank account's sitting right now, the money is not mine. It was never mine. It's to be exercised, to be invested, and they invested in me, so I got to invest in them. And so I'm thankful for that. Ultimately, 2019, 29, it's been up and down, but for the most part, as long as I stay socially connected, it's great. And when I start isolating is when it's rough. That's when it's bad. And if I get hung up on my finances, it gets bad. And I overthink it, just like working out. But just the other day, yesterday, I started driving Lyft. And I might even drive Lyft today on my birthday. And it's not like my car is a Prius, but one, I'm spending time and I'm exercising my money. I'm not just letting it sit there and accrue interest that's going to give me a couple of bucks in 5 years. I'm exercising it, and I'm taking a risk. I am taking a risk on whether or not I might make a profit that day. But really, it's not about, for me, it's about netting a zero. As long as I'm not coming in like, oh, well, I spent $20 today that I really didn't have, because looking at the long term rent and bills like that, I'm okay with maintaining. And a lot of people were like, oh, you could go get a part-time job. You need to go back to work or whatever. Well, for one, I'm still recovering from my neck and back injuries. And so even today, I'm wrapping this up soon because I got an acupuncture appointment. And acupuncture is awesome. But at the same time, if I go back into the workforce without doing my podcast, without writing my book, without living my truth, I'm going to be right back at square one. And I'm glad 30 years has taught me that. So I'm going to take the risk of being happy and writing my book and, doing what I got to do coming out of my pocket to be the artist that I am, because that is me. I am a creative. And I'm okay with that. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm so grateful for the people in my life. I'm going to grab dinner and a movie tonight. I'm going to see my family tomorrow to celebrate my great-grandfather's 90th birthday. And I'm so glad I was able to be there for him earlier this week when he needed to go to the doctor. And just to be able to do that stuff. Yeah, it's a 2-3 hour drive. And I got the dog. And it's a little inconvenient. But you know what? It's not inconvenient. Because that's what we're on this planet to do. We can't forget about those folks. And when people need you, it's something about being there when somebody calls. And even if they don't want to say it, when you just show up, that's the beauty of it. So today's a good day, y'all. And I also, this is the part of the podcast that might get a little weird. So if you aren't religious and you don't want to hear anymore, then you can turn this off. But if you do have faith, or maybe you're struggling with it and maybe you've never heard someone pray, I'm going to pray right now. And I'm going to pray for anyone listening to this. I'm going to pray over our lives. And I'm going to declare the next 30 years and beyond a total blessing. So go ahead and, you can turn this off if you want. And you don't have to. But if you're with me, let's just take a couple of deep breaths. And inhale with 4-second count. And exhale slowly. Let's do that again. Just clearing our mind of any distractions, any clutter. And actually visualizing what might be ailing us, what's vexing you. And I want you to imagine a pearl box, and I want you to put that problem in the box. And the box is laced with velvet, and I want you to imagine your tears going into that box. I want you to imagine your blood, some drops going in there. How you feel this is pulling you apart. And another deep breath. And as we bow our heads and close our eyes, we humbly yet boldly approach the throne. I'm bringing my problems to you, God. I'm laying them at your feet because I can't do it. It's nothing I can do. Only you can, God. Thank you so much for bringing me so far. Thank you so much for not giving up on me when I felt like everyone else gave up on me. God, I thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in you. I thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. I thank you for protecting me every time I blacked out at a party, every time I got in the car with someone drunk, every time I've been hit by a car, I broke my leg, every final, every test, every time I had a falling out with my family. God, I thank you for the struggles, and I thank you for opening up our eyes to be able to see that the journey is paved with your grace and your mercy. So God, I ask that you allow us to recognize these issues in our lives that we can get through and we can change through your power and simply by taking the action, God. Please give me the courage. Please give us the courage, the faith to continue on. Thank you for exposing me to the shame of the cross, to the power of vulnerability, to getting naked, God. If you're my doctor, God, then I'm going to take it all off so you can really diagnose me.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate your teaching me, and I thank you for allowing me to be able to do this, for bringing me this far. And if this is the last day I have on this earth, well, God, I thank you, because it's been a real good run. I don't know what to do with these issues. I don't know what to do with these financial problems. I don't know how to stop stressing. But I know you know. And I know you know my heart. So I invite you in. I invite you into my life. And I thank you for the past 30 years. For every up and down. For all the highs. And every low. God, I thank you for showing me that when I was lonely, I wasn't alone. I pray that you always be in my heart. And that if anyone is struggling right now, God, that you go out there and you'd help them. And you touch their heart and you fill them with joy. I bind the hand of the devil right now in the name of Jesus. Wherever you're at, in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, who was born, who lived and died and was resurrected. His name above every name. And you said that if we asked you, God, you said if we asked you in his name, that you'd do it. So I believe, God. I believe that you're going to do it. This is such an incredible life. And it might be filled with pain. I might be separated from my family at some ICE concentration camp. I might be getting extradited. I might be on death row. I might be in my car. But God, you are everywhere. And I thank you for the power of prayer and allowing us to touch in to what you have so manifested in this life. I give you all the honor, the glory, and the praise, God. And I just thank you. And thank you for my birthday, God. Thank you for all these years around this planet. And I pray that the next 30 be full of prosperity for all of us, full of abundance. Help us be strong, God. Help us stand up for what's right. Help us be how you were when you were on this planet. Amen. I want to thank you guys so much for listening to the Rhetorical Sake. I'm really glad I was able to do this, and it's totally worth it. Yeah, it's a couple hours of my time on my birthday, but you know what? That's what it is, ho. No, I'm playing. All right, I'm going to put some links in the description. Check out God Sent Dog. It's actually on sale for like $2.99 right now for Kindle. So I'll put the link to my website, erhunter.squarespace.com. I'm not on Patreon or anything like that. I would really appreciate it if you guys, shared this episode, download it. Please let it download on your phone, on whatever app you have, especially the podcast app for Apple. And buy the book. It's $3 today. That'd be the best birthday present. And if you go to smile.amazon.com and look up God Sent Dog, the story of how one dog led a man to sobriety, that will help raise money for the American Cancer Society. We could do this, y'all. It's all good, homie. I'm so grateful, y'all. Happy birthday. And thank you all for the birthday wishes. Bye.
They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out that it might become plain that they all are not of us. These people left our churches, but they never really belonged with us. Otherwise, they would have stayed with us. When they left, it proved they didn't belong with us. 1 John 2:19. Be easy, y'all.